Most people see a $60,000 house sitting on a full acre and assume the photograph is hiding something. Maybe half the roof is missing. Maybe the floors lean toward the center. Maybe the neighborhood has been abandoned. Because in the housing market, most Americans know a livable house with real land is not supposed to cost less than a new pickup truck. But in rural South Carolina, the missing piece is often not a roof, a foundation, or even a neighborhood. Sometimes it is a lender. Sometimes it is a search filter. Sometimes it is one word buried in the property description. And sometimes the house is affordable precisely because almost nobody shopping online is looking in the place where it sits. That creates one of the strangest contradictions in American housing. South Carolina is attracting new residents at an extraordinary rate. Between July 2024 and July 2025, the state added nearly 80,000 people and recorded the highest percentage population growth of any state. Yet, beyond the coastal markets, the Charlotte spillover suburbs, and the most recognizable parts of the upstate, there are still small houses, brick ranches, manufactured homes, and country properties sitting on 1, 3, 5, or even 8 acres, at prices that look as if they came from another decade. The easy conclusion is that these places must be bad investments. The more useful conclusion is that rural real estate does not operate as one market. It operates as 3 markets, layered on top of each other. There is the physical market, which is the house, the land, the roof, the well, the septic system, and everything you can touch. There is the financial market, which decides whether a bank will lend on it, whether an appraiser can support the price, and whether an insurance company is willing to write a policy. And then there is the attention market, which determines whether a buyer ever sees the property in the first place. A rural home can perform well in the physical market and still fail in the other two. That is how a solid house with an acre can sit quietly while smaller suburban houses receive multiple offers. It is also why the cheapest property is not automatically the best deal. The strongest opportunity is usually the house that survives all 3 markets. Consider the type of property that appears near the top of many rural South Carolina searches. A compact, custom home built within the last decade, attached to a barn or oversized workshop, sitting on several wooded acres. The living area may be only 900 or 1,000 square feet, but the structure beside it might be as large as the house itself. It may have concrete floors, tall doors, electricity, room for equipment, and enough height to build a loft. At a price near $300,000, buyers may not call that cheap. They compare the bedroom count to a suburban house and see only 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. But that comparison ignores what would be difficult and expensive to recreate. The buyer is not simply purchasing 900 square feet. The buyer may be getting 8 acres, an existing well, a finished slab, mature landscaping, a workshop, fencing, garden infrastructure, and a shell that could potentially support future living space. That kind of property illustrates the first rural housing trap. Buyers compare houses by finished square footage, even when the land and utility infrastructure may represent a significant part of the value. The challenge is that land does not always help the monthly payment. A lender still looks at the borrower's income, existing debt, appraisal, and interest rate. A family may love the idea of a barn and 8 acres, but when the monthly payment is calculated at current borrowing costs, enthusiasm can disappear before anyone schedules an inspection. The house has not become less useful. The financing environment has made the usefulness harder to afford. There is another category that looks more conventional. The late 1970s or early 1980s brick ranch on 2 acres. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a simple rectangular footprint, mature trees, and no homeowners association. These houses rarely photograph like new construction. The ceilings may be lower. The kitchen may have older cabinets. The floors may change from room to room. But the structure can be straightforward, understandable, and relatively easy to maintain. A brick ranch near the Interstate 85 corridor may sit within reach of Greenville, Spartanburg, or Charlotte, yet receive surprisingly little attention. The reason is not necessarily commute time. It is search behavior. Relocating buyers usually begin with names they already recognize. They type Greenville. They type Spartanburg. They type Charlotte suburbs. They may draw a small circle around a job center or select a list of school districts recommended by a real estate website. The towns between those circles disappear, even when the actual driving distance remains practical. This creates a map penalty. A house can be physically close to growth and psychologically far from it. That penalty can produce opportunity, but it can also affect resale. Buying outside the popular search map may lower the entry price, yet the same weak visibility can still exist when the owner decides to sell. A buyer should not simply ask whether the location works today. The buyer should ask who is likely to want the property 5 or 10 years from now. Would it appeal to a commuter, a retiree, a small contractor, a gardener, a remote worker, or a family seeking acreage? Is there reliable internet? Is the nearest hospital reasonable? Is the road maintained? Can delivery trucks reach the property? Those questions matter more than whether the town name is currently fashionable. Then there is the rural house, described with the 2 words that destroy online interest faster than almost anything else. Needs updating. It may be a 3-bedroom home from the 1970s on nearly 3 acres. The roof may be serviceable. The floor plan may be functional. The plumbing may work. But the kitchen is brown instead of white. The bathroom has older tile. And the walls were painted before gray became the default color of American real estate. Online buyers often treat outdated and damaged as though they mean the same thing. They do not. An outdated kitchen can be used for years. A damaged foundation cannot. Old cabinet doors are visible in listing photographs. Improper drainage, failing septic components, and unsafe electrical work often are not. Yet buyers frequently reject the visible cosmetic problem and overlook the hidden structural one in a prettier house. That is where a disciplined buyer can gain an advantage. The goal is not to fall in love with every fixer. It is to separate ugly from expensive. Paint, cabinet hardware, light fixtures, and flooring can be estimated. A septic replacement, extensive termite damage, structural movement, or a failed private well can change the economics of the entire purchase. The correct question is not, does this house need work? Almost every affordable rural property does. The question is, can the work be defined, priced, and financed before closing? Financing matters because many buyers at the lower end of the market rely on loan programs with property condition standards. A conventional loan, an FHA-backed loan, a USDA loan, and a renovation loan do not all treat the same house in the same way. A home that appears inexpensive may be unavailable to the buyer whose financing requires certain repairs to be completed first. This produces a cruel mismatch. The people most attracted to an affordable fixer are often the people least able to purchase it with cash, while the loan they need may reject the property's current condition. A renovation mortgage may help in some cases, but it adds paperwork, contractor requirements, inspections, timelines, and lender-specific rules. It is not a magic phrase that turns every damaged home into an easy purchase. Before making an offer, the buyer needs a lender who has actually closed that type of loan, not someone who merely says the program exists. A different rural property may have 5 acres, nearly 2,000 square feet, and an annual property tax bill that looks strangely high compared with nearby homes. That number can scare buyers away immediately. But in South Carolina, property classification matters. A qualifying owner-occupied legal residence generally receives a 4% assessment ratio, while other real estate is generally assessed at 6%. That does not mean every high tax bill will automatically collapse when a buyer moves in, and the county assessor has the final say. It does mean a tax figure from an investor-owned or non-primary property may not accurately represent what a qualifying owner-occupant will eventually pay. The correct move is not to accept the listing's tax number or dismiss it. Contact the county assessor. Ask how the property is currently classified. Ask what exemptions may apply. Request an estimate based on the intended use and purchase price. Taxes are only one part of the acreage equation. 5 acres can look like freedom in a photograph and become a maintenance schedule after closing. Open land may require mowing, drainage work, fencing, and driveway maintenance. Wooded acreage may contain dead trees, invasive plants, storm debris, and boundaries that are difficult to recognize. A barn may add enormous utility, but it also has a roof, siding, electrical components, and doors that eventually need repair. Land should be valued according to what the owner will actually do with it. Someone who keeps animals, operates a small business, stores equipment, or grows food may use every part of 5 acres. Someone who wants only privacy may discover that 2 acres would deliver the same lifestyle with much less work. That does not make the larger property a bad deal. It means the buyer should calculate the cost of owning the dream, not just the cost of purchasing it. One of the most misunderstood categories is the manufactured home that has been permanently attached to land. It may offer 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a fenced yard, multiple storage buildings, and more than an acre. It may even have a tenant already paying rent. On paper, the numbers can look better than almost anything else in the area. Then the listing says manufactured, and much of the audience disappears. Some buyers hear that word and imagine a deteriorating trailer in a temporary park. But manufactured housing covers a wide range of ages, construction standards, foundations, title conditions, and levels of maintenance. A home that has been properly installed, permanently affixed, and legally converted to real property is very different from a unit sitting on rented land with an unresolved title. The problem is that financing, insurance, and resale can still be more complicated than with a site-built house. The date of manufacture matters. The foundation matters. The presence of required labels or documentation may matter. Additions must have been built correctly. The title history must be clear. Some lenders and insurers will accept the property. Others will not. The rental income does not erase those issues. A property producing $1,200 per month can still be a poor investment if the roof, septic system, and insurance consume the cash flow, or if the tenant's rent is below market but difficult to change under the existing lease. Before calling it an income property, a buyer needs to see the lease, payment history, security deposit records, maintenance history, utility responsibilities, and local rules. The buyer should also calculate vacancy, repairs, capital expenses, and management. Gross rent is not profit. This category can still be one of the strongest affordability options in rural America. It simply demands more document review than the attractive monthly rent suggests. The next group lives below $100,000. Older brick homes and small ranches that need repairs but sit on real land. This is where the photographs become less polished, and the opportunity becomes more difficult to evaluate. A house may have original windows, an aging HVAC system, dated wiring, and a kitchen that has not changed in 40 years. It may also have solid masonry, a simple roof line, and a floor plan that can be improved without moving structural walls. A low price gives the buyer room to renovate only if the house does not consume that room immediately. Imagine a $98,000 brick ranch on slightly more than an acre. Add closing costs, inspections, an electrical upgrade, roof work, HVAC replacement, flooring, paint, appliances, and septic repairs. The finished investment could move far beyond the original number. That does not automatically destroy the deal. The finished value might still justify the work, but the buyer needs comparable sales, contractor estimates, and a realistic contingency before signing the contract. The phrase, "I can do most of it myself," should not be treated as a complete budget. Materials cost money. Tools cost money. Permits may be required. Work takes longer when it happens on evenings and weekends. Some jobs must be performed by licensed professionals. And unfinished renovations have a way of keeping a house from becoming comfortable for years. A successful fixer purchase usually begins with a boring spreadsheet, not an emotional tour. The house should be divided into immediate safety items, systems likely to fail soon, functional improvements, and cosmetic wishes. The first group must be solved. The second needs money reserved. The third improves daily life. The fourth can wait. If the purchase only works when every repair arrives under budget, nothing unexpected is found, and all the owner's labor is valued at zero, it does not work. Now consider the listing that advertises a 1,700 square foot house, 3 bathrooms, a full acre, and something rare in much of South Carolina, a basement. The asking price is around $90,000. The words "investor special" and "strictly as is" appear near the top. Most ordinary buyers leave immediately. That reaction is understandable. As is means the seller is signaling that repairs will not be negotiated or completed. It does not reveal how severe the problems are. The basement could be useful dry space, or it could be the most expensive part of the house. Water intrusion, foundation movement, mold, outdated mechanical equipment, and improper alterations must be investigated. A basement in a region where they are uncommon deserves more inspection, not less. This is where cheap house content on the internet often becomes irresponsible. A low asking price is presented as proof that homeownership is easy, while the cost of making the property safe and financeable is treated as a minor detail. The serious buyer does the opposite. The asking price receives less attention than the total project cost. That means paying for the right inspections, obtaining an insurance quote before the contingency period expires, checking permits where records are available, and speaking with contractors who understand local labor costs. It means verifying whether public water and sewer are actually connected or merely available nearby. It means checking whether an old fuel tank, abandoned well, or failing drain field exists on the property. The seller's use of "as is" does not prevent inspections. It changes what the buyer will do with the results. The buyer may accept the condition, renegotiate if the seller allows it, or walk away. Walking away from a cheap house can be one of the most profitable decisions a buyer makes. And then there is the property that attracts everyone. The move-in ready house, around $60,000. It may be small, perhaps just over 1,000 square feet, with 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. It may sit on an acre near a quiet town surrounded by forest. The kitchen works. The roof is not visibly failing. The porch is usable. There is no giant renovation story to explain the price. This is the point where viewers ask the obvious question. If it is really livable, why has someone not bought it? The answer reveals the hidden structure of the low-cost housing market. A very small mortgage can be harder to obtain than buyers expect. Many parts of originating a loan, processing, underwriting, appraisal, title work, and compliance still require work even when the amount borrowed is low. Because some costs are fixed or limited by lending rules, a small balance mortgage may be less attractive to some lenders. That is an inference from the way mortgage origination expenses and fee limits operate, not a rule that every lender follows. An appraisal may create another problem. The appraiser needs comparable sales. In a small rural town, there may be few recent sales of similar houses. One property may have 5 acres. Another may need major repairs, and another may have sold privately. The listing price can look reasonable to the buyer, while still being difficult to support with clean, comparable data. Insurance can become the next obstacle. The home may be inexpensive, but an old roof, outdated electrical panel, wood-burning system, vacant status, or previous claims can make coverage costly or unavailable through the first company contacted. Without acceptable insurance, the mortgage cannot close. Then there is the 1-bathroom penalty. Many buyers set their search to 2 bathrooms without thinking. A 3-bedroom, 1-bath home may never appear on their screen. The buyer does not reject it. The algorithm removes it before the decision begins. The same thing happens with square footage. A buyer selects 1,200 square feet as the minimum, and an efficient 1,100 square foot home disappears. A buyer selects site built only, and a well-maintained manufactured home on owned land disappears. A buyer selects homes built after 1980, and every solid brick ranch from the 1960s disappears. Filters are useful, but they can become expensive. Every additional requirement shrinks the market and concentrates demand on the same polished properties everyone else can see. This is the strongest insight hidden inside South Carolina's cheapest acreage homes. Affordability is often located just outside the default settings. It may be 15 minutes beyond the popular town. It may have one bathroom instead of two. It may need paint instead of staging. It may have a manufactured classification that requires a specialized lender. It may need a renovation loan. It may be too inexpensive for the first bank a buyer calls. But stepping outside the filters does not mean abandoning standards. It means replacing automated standards with informed ones. A buyer should be flexible about cabinet color and strict about foundation movement, flexible about town recognition and strict about road access, flexible about square footage and strict about water, wastewater, insurance, and title, flexible about cosmetic age and strict about total project cost. USDA rural housing programs may offer a path for eligible borrowers and eligible properties. The USDA's South Carolina Direct Home Loan Program states that no down payment is typically required for qualifying applicants, while the broader Guaranteed program is also designed around zero-down financing in eligible rural areas. Income limits, property eligibility, condition requirements, and lender rules still apply. A buyer should verify the specific address and personal eligibility, rather than assuming that every country house qualifies. The lowest price is therefore not the final reveal. Financeability is. A house with a slightly higher price, clear title, acceptable condition, insurable roof, documented septic system, and good comparable sales can be cheaper to acquire than a deeply discounted property that requires cash, major repairs, and months of uncertainty. Financeability acts like an invisible amenity. You cannot photograph it, but it affects the number of buyers, the speed of closing, and the future resale value. The same is true of insurability. Two houses may look almost identical, but the one with a newer roof, updated wiring, and documented improvements may have a far lower ownership risk. Paying more for that house may be the conservative decision. This is why the best rural deal is rarely discovered by sorting from lowest price to highest. It is discovered by measuring the gap between what the market assumes and what due diligence proves. If the market assumes that an older house is structurally bad because the kitchen is dated, an inspection may prove the assumption wrong. If the market assumes that a manufactured home cannot be financed, a specialized lender may show that it can. If buyers assume a property has permanently high taxes, the county may confirm that a qualifying legal residence would be treated differently. If everyone assumes an unknown town is too remote, reliable internet and a practical highway connection may prove otherwise. But the reverse is equally important. Due diligence can prove that a beautiful bargain is not a bargain at all. Before buying a rural South Carolina home, begin with the county, not the listing description. Confirm zoning, permitted use, setbacks, and whether additional dwellings, animals, or business activities are allowed. No HOA does not mean there are no rules. Deed restrictions, county ordinances, floodplain requirements, and septic limitations can still control the property. Verify the boundaries. Rural fences are not always located on the legal line. Aerial maps are useful but are not surveys. If the placement of a barn, driveway, well, or future addition matters, understand exactly what land is included. Investigate water and wastewater. A private well should be tested and inspected. A septic system should be located, evaluated, and matched to the number of bedrooms. Ask about maintenance history. Do not assume that an empty field automatically supports another house. Soil suitability and county approval may determine whether a second septic system is possible. Request an insurance quote using the actual address and property details. Do this early. A rough online estimate is not enough for an older rural house. Review the roof, electrical service, plumbing supply lines, HVAC, and foundation. These systems can turn a $60,000 purchase into a $120,000 project faster than cosmetic renovations ever will. Calculate the drive honestly. Test it at the time you would normally commute. Check groceries, medical care, schools, fuel, emergency services, and internet providers. Rural privacy is valuable, but repeated long trips have a cost. Then plan the exit before the entrance. Who will buy this property from you later? Will it appeal only to a cash investor, or could an ordinary owner-occupant finance it? Are comparable homes selling? Does the land provide a real use, or is it simply acreage that future buyers must maintain? A good rural house does not need to appeal to everyone. It needs to appeal strongly to a definable group of buyers. That is the real story behind South Carolina's overlooked country homes. They are not all secret bargains. Some are cheap because they need expensive work. Some are cheap because the location offers fewer jobs and services. Some face legitimate financing or insurance barriers. But others are overlooked because modern housing searches reward sameness. 2 bathrooms, new paint, recognizable suburb, standard construction, easy appraisal. The more a house falls outside that template, the fewer buyers see it, even when the property may suit their life better. For someone priced out of the conventional market, that mismatch can create a path to ownership. Not an effortless path, and not a risk-free one, but a real one. The opportunity is not simply to find a cheap house. It is to understand why it is cheap before everyone else does. If the reason is a failing structure, an impossible septic situation, or an uninsurable condition, walk away. If the reason is an outdated kitchen, an ignored town, a poorly chosen search filter, or a financing problem that a qualified lender can solve, the property may deserve a closer look. A $60,000 house on an acre can still be expensive. A $200,000 brick ranch can still be a bargain. The asking price does not decide which one is better. The complete path from contract to closing, from repairs to ownership, and eventually from ownership to resale decides it. So which would you choose? The move-in ready small house at the lowest price? The brick ranch with easier financing? The manufactured home already producing rent, or the larger fixer with enough land to build something new? Tell me which risk you would be willing to accept and which one would make you walk away.